The New York Islanders earned a point in their shootout loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets, but they really should have had two. We'll talk about the controversy that may have cost the Islanders a point and possibly a playoff berth. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. The New York Islanders fall in a shootout to the Columbus Blue Jackets, 4-3. This is a game that the Islanders led 2-0, led 3-2, and let slip away. And yet, still, in spite of the fact that they only played one good period, this is a game the Islanders probably should have won. With 9.3 seconds to go, the Islanders appeared to get the game-winning goal from Kyle Palmeri, his second goal of the game, if it would have counted. But goaltender interference is the ruling on the ice, and the War Room basically reviews it and says, according to the Islanders broadcast, that they didn't have any evidence to overturn or to change the call on the ice. So the call stood. Patrick Roy, after the game, if Toronto is afraid to overturn calls on the ice, we don't need Toronto. Very well said by Patrick Roy. And I think, realistically, this is a controversial call. And was there contact? Yes, no doubt. Was the contact in the crease? That was close, but I still think the answer, again, is yes. But did Elvis Merzlikins have time to reset? I think the answer to that is probably yes. And would he have saved the puck if Palmeri didn't make that contact with him? I think the answer to that is probably no. But at the end of the day, the call is upheld, the goal is waved off, and the game goes into overtime. Nobody scores there. The game goes into a shootout. The Islanders lose the shootout 1-0. And that's it. The Islanders extend their point streak to 6 games, but also lose a game that they really needed to win. You wanted to win in regulation. It looked like they had done that with the Palmeri goal. And yet, boy, what a painful way to lose. And I think, realistically, and everydayers, you've heard me talk about this before. Nobody can tell me what goaltender interference is anymore. You could talk about whatever the definition is, the goalie, you have to make contact inside the blue paint, who initiates it. There does not seem to be a clear definition and a consistently enforced definition of what goaltender interference is and what it isn't. And, I don't care what standard the NHL comes up with. If you basically say you have to knock the goalie down, or if you say you just breathe on the goalie, those are maybe the two extremes. Whatever the standard is going to be, Just let the standard be the same and enforce it consistently. You can go back to, 25, 30 years ago with Brett Hull and his skate being in the crease. And, was that a cup-winning goal or not? At least then, as much as I thought the rule was a little extreme, it was clear what the rule was. They didn't enforce it in that particular instance, okay, but the league has to know, the players have to know, the fans have to know, the coaches have to know what is goalie interference and what is not goalie interference. And the standard has to be the same. And the fact that what the referees call it on the ice, is when nobody knows what it is, the call on the ice is going to be upheld 85, 90% of the time. And the fact that nobody can tell, if Gary Bettman was hooked up to a lie detector and you put a gun to his head, which I don't advocate, but again, just this is a theoretical, hypothetical thing. If his life depended on it, I don't know if he could clearly tell you what constitutes goalie interference and what is a good goal. And let's face it, the league needs to know, because the Islanders, I guarantee you, are not the only team dealing with this inconsistency. And one way or the other, the nightmare for the New York Islanders and for the NHL, like, what if the Islanders miss the playoffs by 1 point at the end of this season and the Blue Jackets get in by 1 point? This call could be the difference between the Islanders getting into the playoffs and the Islanders staying home. And, again, whether the Islanders deserve to make the playoffs or not, there's a lot of other discussions you could have. But I don't think the league wants to see whether a team wins a playoff game or gets into the playoffs or wins a Stanley Cup being dependent on goaltender interference call, yay or nay. This is the second time, at least, that this has happened to the Islanders, just in the stretch drive alone. And I doubt this gets clarified this year, whether it's for the rest of the regular season or in the playoffs. But this offseason, the NHL needs to lay down the law and then enforce it consistently. You got to explain what is allowed, what is not allowed, and when a goal can be overturned for goaltender interference. Because there were some goals by Anders Lee that were waved off. This goal by Kyle Palmeri is waved off. We do not seem to have a strict standard. Earlier in this game, the Blue Jackets lost a challenge on another one of the Islanders' goals. You just don't know what is going to happen with these goalie interference calls. And the fact that, in addition, if you challenge for goalie interference and you lose the challenge, you are called for delay of game. That means it's even more important for a team, or for the league rather, to get the goalie interference thing right. Because not only does it cost you a goal for the goal that you're allegedly claiming goalie interference for, but, normal hockey teams who can score on the power play, that could cost you 2 goals if you challenge and then you give up a goal in the ensuing power play if you lose that challenge. All of this needs to be fixed. I don't care if they make the rules super strict or if they make the rules super lenient. They just have to define it and enforce it consistently, because fans deserve that much. And the players deserve that much, because not knowing, it just stirs up a lot of problems, frustrations, and you end up in a situation where teams win or lose games on things that nobody can clearly define what they are. And I'll admit, I had DMs on social media from other hosts in the Locked On Network who don't have skin in this game. It's not like, oh, yeah, this was a host of Locked On Canadiens and they are really interested in, who wins. This was from a team that is not officially clinched a playoff spot, but they're in, okay? And he said, yeah, that goal should have counted. Here's a guy who watches hockey and analyzes hockey and talks about hockey for a living. Then another host and another friend said, no goal, shouldn't count. Nobody, even the people who watch this game and talk about it and analyze it for a living, understands what goalie interference is anymore. Gary Bettman, figure it out. Make it work. Put down your foot, define it, enforce it fairly and consistently, and let's move on. But if the Islanders miss the playoffs by 1 point, I guarantee you, this game and a few others where goals were overturned or not overturned will not easily be forgotten by hockey fans, and in particular by Islander fans. How did the Islanders do in this game? I mean, did they deserve better than the loss? We're going to break down and analyze the game, have our key takeaways, plus our hero and go to the game. We'll also talk about a roster move made by the Islanders in this game that really speaks volumes about the organization's lack of depth. Plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, a player who joined the Islanders in 2010, 2011, spent 2 seasons on the island and ended up playing on the top line. Let's see if you can guess who this forward is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. And the FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Check it out today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com. This game was frustrating in more ways than one. The New York Islanders in the first period were the dominant team in this contest. They outplayed the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets looked like they had, I mean, maybe it's a little extreme to say they looked like they had given up, but, there were plenty of people out there basically saying the Blue Jackets are done. They're done for the season. They were on a 6-game losing streak. The Islanders are at home. They dominated the first period, and they led 2-0. Pierre Engvall, once again, goes to the net and is rewarded. Gotta love watching him play better hockey over the last, now maybe half a dozen games. And it's no surprise that getting more scoring from the bottom six, and, Engvall, part of that bottom six, that fourth line, is helping the New York Islanders. When you lose Brock Nelson via trade and Matthew Barzal is out of the lineup, the idea that you need more scoring from your bottom six isn't rocket science, but the Islanders got it, and Pierre Engvall makes it 1-0. And then 5.5 minutes later, roughly, Palmeri makes it 2-0. That's with 1:19 left in the period. It just looked like the Islanders were in complete control of the game. And then the teams go into the locker room. They switch sides of the ice, and it was like they switched uniforms. The second period was almost all Columbus. The Islanders back on their heels, struggling to get the puck out of the zone, spending way too much time in their own zone, defensive breakdowns leading to a goal by Adam Fantilli. And then, even worse, a shorthanded goal to tie it by Boone Jenner. Both of those two goals, Noah Dobson just not doing what he needed to do defensively. It's been a problem all year long. And, the Islanders' power play just remains an absolute problem. They couldn't score, and again, they give up a short-handed goal. That is a recipe for disaster. Not only is it a shorthanded goal, it's a tying goal. And then the Islanders get fortunate. Anders Lee scores in the last minute of the second period, and the Islanders are up 3-2. And you think, okay, momentum changer. Yeah, the Islanders were flat in the second period. They're going to come out in the third period and take control of this game because this is a veteran team. They're playing a team that is on a 6-game losing streak. The Islanders are at home, and they know they need to win this game in regulation to put the Blue Jackets squarely in their rearview mirror for the rest of this playoff race. And instead, the Islanders keep retreating. They keep holding on to this lead, not doing the right thing. And Kirill Marchenko ties the game with 7:04 left in regulation. Again, let's overlook for a minute the goal that was overturned that would have given the Islanders the win. You cannot, if you want to make the playoffs, if you want to consider yourself a playoff team, playoff teams do not blow 2-0 and 3-2 leads at home against a team you're fighting for a playoff berth with. This was the game you needed to have. And yes, the Islanders got a point, 6 games in a row with a point. That is a positive. But after the first period, it was all Columbus for the majority of this game. And you can't let that happen if you're the New York Islanders. You just can't. Look at the numbers here. First period, shots on goal, Islanders 17, Columbus 6. For the rest of the game, the Islanders had 16 shots on goal. That's second period, third period, and overtime. They had more shots on goal in the first period, in the first 20 minutes, than they did in the last 45. And in the third period, with the Islanders holding on to that 3-2 lead, they are outshot 17-4. You can't play like that. You cannot go into a shell, constantly retreat on defense, and end up giving too many quality scoring chances to a desperate Columbus Blue Jackets team. The Islanders, I'll say it this way. You could say all you want about the overturned goal and you have a legitimate gripe, but playoff teams do not play one period of good hockey and expect to win. You might be able to get away with that against one of the worst teams in the league, teams that are really struggling. Oh, wait, the Blue Jackets had lost 6 straight already. Not that they're a bad team, but they were a slumping team. And the Islanders took their foot off the gas and watched this game slip away. And that is just not a formula for winning hockey, for getting into the playoffs. Playoff teams finish off their opponents when they have 2-0 leads at home and 3-2 leads in the third period. The Islanders just could not finish. Hero and go to the game, for me, hero of the game, it's got to be Kyle Palmeri. And I'm even going to give him credit, in air quotes, for the second goal that didn't count. So to me, Palms is going to be the hero of the game. And the go to the game, War Room in Toronto, maybe, for their decision. I mean, you could go you can go Noah Dobson for his poor defensive play, but I got to go with the War Room and the officials for not counting that Kyle Palmeri goal. So let me know your opinion about it, but my gosh, I don't get it. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. But the Islanders, you could say what you want about the officiating and the War Room. 1 period out of 3+ overtime, not good enough. And the Islanders know it, and they need to be better. All right. We're going to talk about a roster decision by the Islanders that worked out okay, worked out pretty well, but it speaks volumes about the problems with the way this team is constructed. We'll have that and our Islanders birthday of the day coming up next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like watching basketball live. The energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting at courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. I just checked the Game Time app, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. Game Time Picks even highlights super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. And with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Once again, the New York Islanders had a player who was ill or injured. In this case, Hudson Fasching. He had an illness, missed this game against the Blue Jackets. And once again, the New York Islanders decided to move Adam Boqvist to forward, not on the fourth line, but on the third line to replace Hudson Fasching. Couple of observations. First of all, congratulations. Boqvist played fine. He was a +1. He had 2 assists in this game. Can't complain about what he gave you, because he did what was asked of him and more. And Patrick Waugh, when asked about it before the game, said he wanted to play Boqvist because he wanted to possibly jumpstart the power play and have Boqvist play on the power play, which he did at times in this game. But what does this say about the way this roster is put together? That this is the second time this year that You are saying that a spare defenseman, a guy who has played a grand total of one previous game at forward this year, and I believe he played a couple of games at forward earlier in his career, but we're not talking about a lot, is the best available option. Because you've got Matt Martin. Obviously, Patrick Waugh does not have confidence in Matt Martin. He's healthy. He's not on IR. He's filling the role of Hudson Fasching, which is a grinder's fourth line or third line role. You know, it's not like the Islanders have either Matt Martin or Hudson Fasching out there because they're going to score a lot of goals. So if Matt Martin can't sub in for Hudson Fasching when he's ill for one game, why is he on the roster? And I'm a big Matt Martin fan. I love everything he's done for this organization over the years. But if you're telling me that he is not going to be inserted into the game when healthy to replace Hudson Fasching, why is he taking up a roster spot at this point? You know, Lou Lamoriello, everydayers may remember, Lou Lamoriello has said, yes, I'm loyal, but I'm not going to let loyalty get in the way of winning. And yet you've got a guy that clearly your coach does not trust to be out there on the ice. And he's still sitting when Hudson Fasching is ill and out of the lineup. And look, the last time this happened, the Islanders were on the West Coast. It was a last-minute thing. I understand. You're not going to call up someone from Bridgeport, fly them out to the West Coast with very little notice. It was not logistically realistic to have someone from the AHL get called up. But you know what? Are you seriously telling me that there's nobody on the roster in Bridgeport? Nobody. Not Alex Jeffries, not, Brian Pinho, not Eric Carlson. There's nobody on that roster in Bridgeport who can come in and give you a game, whether it's to provide grinding like Hudson Fasching typically does, or if you need more offense. You're telling me there's nobody on that roster you can count on to come up? And this is not the first time this has happened, because when injuries hit the defense core, Lou Lamoriello, again, first he brings up Isaiah George, and Isaiah George played well for 10, 15 games and then started to hit the wall. Fine. But three guys he ends up importing in Perunovic, DeAngelo, and Boqvist because there's nobody down in Bridgeport who you trust. The way this team is put together, notwithstanding, Boqvist did a great job in this game for the New York Islanders, and I give him all the credit in the world. But the fact that you feel that your best option under these circumstances is to have Adam Boqvist play 15 and a half minutes as a forward when there's nobody in Bridgeport and nobody on your roster who can fill in, it just tells you the way this team is constructed is very, very flawed. And hopefully, Lou Lamoriello allegedly said after the trade deadline, he knows changes have to be made this offseason. Well, again, this is an example of why we need these changes, and we better see them. And I don't want to hear about cap problems, and I don't want to hear about no trade clauses, and I don't want to hear about, we were actively pursuing it, but we couldn't get anybody at our asking price. Lou, go out there and make the necessary changes that should have been made a year or two ago, because, again, this team has not won a playoff series in 3 years, and it very well may be going on 4 this year. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day. And Monday was the 42nd birthday of former Islanders winger P.A. Parenteau. the native of Hull, Quebec, a ninth-round pick of the Ducks back in 2001, made his NHL debut with the Blackhawks in 2006-2007, played for the Rangers in 2009-2010, but became a full-time NHLer for the first time with the Islanders in 2010-2011, ended up slotting in on the first line, had 20 goals and 53 points that year. The following year, 18 goals, 67 points. Then played for the Avalanche, Canadiens, Maple Leafs, Devils, Predators, and actually played a few games in the KHL before hanging up his skates. So Parenteau actually played for the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils in that order. 491 career NHL games, 114 goals, 296 points, 342 penalty minutes. Add 2 goals, 5 points in 20 playoff games. None of those as a member of the Islanders. His best output came with the Islanders. He was on lines with Matt Moulson and John Tavares for much of that time. One of his better games, how about November 5th, 2011? Islanders hosting the Washington Capitals at the old barn, the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Tomas Vokoun in goal for Washington. Rick DiPietro, the netminder for the New York Islanders. And with the Capitals up 2-0 after one period, PA Parenteau, our Islanders' birthday today, sets up Franz Nielsen to get the Islanders on the board early in the second. Then late in the second, he sets up Brian Ralston for a goal, Nielsen with the other assist, 2-2 after 2 periods. With the game tied at 3-3, late in the third, our Islanders' birthday of the day, PA Parenteau scores, Milan Ursina and Franz Nielsen with the assist, an empty netter by John Tavares, gives the Islanders a 5-3 win. Rick DiPietro, 25 saves, but for our Islanders' birthday of the day, PA Parenteau, a goal, 2 assists. He was a +3. He had 5 penalty minutes, and he scored on one of his 3 shots on goal in 16 minutes, 24 seconds of ice time. And, he also had the game-winning goal. It was a boarding penalty, not a fighting penalty, by the way, that put PA Parenteau in the box for 5 minutes in that game. But PA Parenteau, a solid, surprising first-line player for the Islanders for 2 seasons in the early 2000 teens. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Everydayers, we will be back tomorrow. We will have a preview of the Islanders' upcoming game against the Vancouver Canucks to close out the homestand, and we'll have our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders, and we may also include some mailbag questions, so if you've got them, send them in. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.